Hey, you guys. You know that phrase. Hey, you guys. Hello, everyone. Hey, you guys. It's Sarah. Welcome to the Real Robert podcast. I am excited for this episode because I was inspired to create this episode from my daughter. And my God, she inspires me all the time. She's amazing. Her name means woman of God. If you want to know what her name is, you can look up what is woman of God in a name and you'll find out her name. And I am constantly inspired by her and just see the way that God is working in her and through her, and his light just shines out from her. It just radiates. And I love that. I truly believe that's true of all children, which is why God calls us to be like children, simple, pure, innocent, full of joy, full of love, full of light, and seeing things in a different way from the inside. And I believe we get to live that way when we live with the power of his Holy Spirit within us, when we invite God to live in us, when we give our lives down to him, and when we say, God, come on in. And ever since I made that decision, I will not say, because I couldn't honestly say that life has been easy, but I can say that I feel the peace of his presence when I'm going through really hard things. And that's especially when I lean in, and why I understand that he lets us go through hard things, because that's often what we need to lean into him, to experience the power of his grace and for him to make a way, because we get to that point where our back is against the wall and we're like, God, I don't know what to do at all. And he's like, now's the time. And we're like, what do you mean? I don't know what you're saying. And he says, let me take the wheel, my darling. And that's what we can choose to do. We can say, all right, it's up to you, God, because I don't know. I don't know how you're going to make a way through. And then we can sing the worship song, I don't know how you make a way, but I know you will. And I trust you still. And thank you that you never leave me or forsake me. And we can just repeat and say all these things, because really with God, it's a rinse and repeat. It's not, oh, I got saved that one day. It's every day. It's waking up daily and putting on our cross. It's waking up daily and surrendering to him. It's waking up daily and getting into the word with him, and letting him speak in us, to us, through us, and letting ourselves just let it go. Let it go. But I think a lot of times we want to hold on to what we deem as control. We actually don't have as much control as we think we do. And we can feel anger come through when that's what it feels like. We feel mad, like, oh, it's up to you. And the enemy wants us to believe that that is true. Oh, it's up to you. You got to figure this out. You got to make a way through this. And we're like, I'm giving it my best. I'm giving it my best. And the wonderful thing is that our best is not God's best. And we can say, hey, God, I did what I did. Now you can have the rest. And he's like, thank you. Now we can move. Now you can experience breakthrough. And that's really what it's all about. And this conversation I had with my daughter led me through this revelation when I've experienced frustration. We were looking at moldy, rotten fruit, and I wrote down moldy, rotten fruit used for good. Pod. That's this. That's this right here, right now. The podcast, Real Raw Redeemed. And God has just changed the way that I see things, and it's absolutely amazing. So I saw in my refrigerator moldy, rotten fruit, and I was so mad. I was like, "Why didn't you?" Right? I heard the enemy's voice. "Why didn't you? Why didn't you eat the fruit?" And I was mad because we didn't eat the fruit, because then it was moldy and rotten, moldy, rotten fruit. And I don't know about you, but this whole Bidenomics things are not getting any less expensive, and I intended, right, to be healthy. My daughter's on summer vacation, and summertime is just a really good time to eat fruit, you know? Like, amen. Fruit is really good in the summer, especially melons and watermelons and all the things. But these were particularly strawberries and blueberries. No, not blueberries, blackberries, strawberries and blackberries. And they were the big size, the family size. We probably got them at Costco. And I am the kind of person who, depending on particular certain things, will up level and upgrade. I will get organic over conventional. And I love when it's on sale. I can't remember if these were on sale at this particular time, but I love when they are, because yeah, I was like, okay, well, at least we're putting in effort to be healthy. We're gonna go organic instead of conventional, and we're gonna eat these things. We're gonna eat all the berries. But we opened up the fridge and we saw moldy, rotten fruit, and I don't even think we took one bite of the fruit that was in the basket. And so I was really mad because I'm looking at this moldy, rotten fruit and there's mold all over it, and it was a big family size, and I was so mad inside for a couple of different reasons because this meant that we were wasting this. I literally felt like, okay, we're literally just throwing away money. What did we eat instead? It probably wasn't as healthy. And so there were a couple different stories going on inside, and the enemy loves when he can get in our mind, and he can get in our mind in the most sneaky, subtle ways, and it can be through moldy fruit. And I heard God say, find gratitude. And I was like, what are you talking about, God? No, this is moldy, rotten fruit. There is no gratitude. And I could tell it wasn't from God because I felt worked up. I felt this tension inside. I felt frustration and hesitation. And my daughter was there and went, oh, mom, look at that. And I was like, I know. How frustrating. How annoying. Why didn't we eat it? And she said, I don't know. She was just so innocent and honest with her response. I don't know. I don't know why we didn't eat it. And I said, well, like it was her fault. Like, "Oh, well, you should have reminded me." And I got all huffy and puffy. Hello, welcome to being human, right? Welcome to good intentions. Well, good intentions only get you so far, right? And we fail to mention that good intentions only get us so far. It's taking the action and making the decision. Well, we did not take the action or make the decision to eat the fruit that we purchased. We only had the intention, and now we were staring at what was frustration. It was moldy, rotten fruit, and I felt I felt like I heard God say, "Find gratitude and lose your attitude." Maybe that was it. Find gratitude and lose your attitude, because I definitely had an attitude in that moment. Find gratitude and lose your attitude, and I was like, "Okay, God, well, I'm gonna need some help with this." So I asked my daughter. I said, "How can we find gratitude for this?" And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "How can we find gratitude for this?" And she said, "That we don't have to eat it?" And I said, "Well, we don't have to throw it away. We don't have to. We could choose to, but we don't have to. We can use it for good. How can we use this for good? How can this moldy, rotten fruit be used for good?" And she said, "Well, it's good that we don't have to eat it because that would be yucky. That would be disgusting." And I said, "Well, sure, that's one thing, but we don't have to throw it away. It's not wasted." And this, I felt like God speaking and saying, "I would never throw you away because you're not wasted. There's nothing that's ever wasted. Everything can be used for my good. And I would never throw you away just because you've changed." And that's all that's happened. That's all that's taken place is this fruit has changed. It used to be edible. I mean, technically you could still eat it, but why would you want to? And I felt like God was saying, see this. This is the way that I see things. You're not moldy. You're not rotten. You're not a mistake. You're not meant to be thrown away. So I wasn't going to throw this moldy, rotten fruit away in the garbage. And I asked my daughter, what can we do? How can this be used for good? Because everything in God's kingdom and in his world can be used for good. And she looked at me like, I don't know what you're saying, Mom. And I said, well, we don't need to throw it away. We can use it for good. And she looked at me like, okay. And and she couldn't come up with anything, and that was okay. But what I was saying, as I said, we can use this for good. It's not too late. It's not too late to use this for good. And that's what God says when he looks at us and we feel moldy, we feel rotten, we feel wasted, we feel like our time has passed, right? Our prime time, right? A lot of us talk about our prime time. Oh, back in high school, back in the day. Well, no, today's the day. It's not back in the day. Today's the day. And today's the day that God is calling us to see his way. And I was able to see his way through this, and it was really cool. That's why I wanted to share it with you, and why I wrote down moldy, rotten fruit used for good, because in God's world and kingdom, everything is used for good, and it's not too late. There's no hesitation or delay. He's like, let's do this now. And I felt like that's what he was saying. Don't throw it out. Don't throw it out. And throwing it out would have been just throwing it in the garbage can. But my husband, the kind of man he planted a garden with my daughter, and it was amazing to see them work together and create this garden bed together. And he loves that. He's definitely got the green thumb more than I do. It's not my thing, but it's so amazing to watch it be his thing. And a couple of weeks ago, or however long ago now, he bought some compost bins and put them in the back. And everything that we have, we put into that, any kind of fruit or food, so it doesn't get wasted. And I said we can put it in the compost bin. We don't have to throw it away. We don't have to say that it's a waste. And I think that that's what God wants to say. You don't have to throw your anything away. You don't have to throw your talent. You don't have to throw your dreams, your aspirations. You don't need to proceed with hesitation and just throw them away and discard them because maybe you feel like the time has passed, or maybe you feel like they're not ripe. The way that these pieces of fruit were, they're not ripe. Oh, I missed my prime time. No, the time is now. We can still use it for good. And so when I asked my daughter, how can we use this fruit for good? She looked at me like I was crazy. And I think sometimes we look at God like he's crazy and we're like, there's no good here. It's rotten. It's moldy. It's nasty. It's stinky. And he's like, you don't see what I see. I see that this can be used for good. And I felt like that's what he was speaking to me when I was looking at this fruit. I felt like he said, don't you see? I can still be used for good. It doesn't need to be thrown out. It doesn't need to be wasted. There's nothing wasted in my kingdom. There's nothing wasted about my timing. My timing is perfect. And he reminded me that his timing is perfect and all things are used for good. And even though we wouldn't put it in our mouth and eat it, it could still be used for good. It could still go into what we're going to grow through, right? The garden is going to go through and grow through different seasons. And part of what we're putting into it, into the seeds that we're planting in the soil is what we're putting in the compost. And so I thought, well, we could put this fruit in the compost and just add it to that, because that's going to go back into the ground. It's going to go back into the roots. It's going to go back into the seeds that we planted. So it doesn't need to be wasted. It can still be used for good. And I felt like God was just like sharing this metaphor with me, this picture. I felt like he said, don't you see? And I was like, oh my gosh, I do see. That's so cool. Moldy, rotten fruit can be used for good. I got to put it on the pod. So here we are on the pod recording this episode. And maybe you have a different perspective when you see things now. Maybe you've thought about yourself like that you're moldy, that you're rotten, that you've missed your time, that it's wasted, that you've wasted money, wasted time, you wasted energy. But when we're looking at it through kingdom eyes, we see it's never wasted time. That God can use all things for good. He might take you out of the fridge and put you into the compost, which is going to go back into the soil and then grow something that you can eat again, which is what we're doing. We got fruits and vegetables in there, and use it and turn it into something good again. And it just all is part of his plan to use all things for his good, all things for his glory. And of course, when they're used for his good and glory, us experiencing the goodness and glory is a part of the story, because we're part of his story. We're his most beloved. We're the apple of his eye. When we look at the creation story, he said all things are good, and then he created man and woman, and he said they're very good. So he looks at you and he doesn't see that you're moldy. He doesn't see that you're rotten. He doesn't see that you're no good anymore. He doesn't see that you should be thrown out the door and taken out, take out the trash. No, but a lot of us think about ourselves like that. And we live in the past, or we live in this future, and the future is just, oh my gosh, anxiety because of the divide. Don't you see? There's where I am and there's where I want to be. Well, that's where God gets to be. God gets to be in the gap, and that's the power of the cross. That's the power of a vertical relationship. Because we get to step into his story of his glory, where he says, you're not moldy, you're not rotten, you shouldn't be thrown away, you shouldn't be discarded. Stop speaking over yourself like that. Speak Jesus over you. If Jesus wouldn't say it to you, you don't have any place or right to say it to you either. And I know Jesus wouldn't look at moldy, rotten fruit and say, yeah, throw it out. It was a waste. No, he says simply change its place. So I changed its place from the fridge to the compost bin and got it really excited about it. I mean, it's stinky. I'm not going to lie. When you open up the lid and like the moldy food that's outside with the heat and the moisture, all the things, doesn't smell good, but I felt really good about putting it in there and using it for good. So I wasn't mad about the money that we spent on it, and I wasn't mad that we didn't eat it. I got excited about it, and I felt like God said, that's my goodness. And I was like, thank you for your glory. Thank you for your goodness. Thank you that I get to use this story for your glory, and I get to share it on the pod. So I imagine that there's something that you're going through, that you're asking for breakthrough, and you're asking for a way to see how it's going to turn around, how it's going to be used for good. And maybe this moldy rotten fruit story will encourage you to think about something in a different way. That it's not time to be thrown away. No, if you're still breathing, you still have a purpose. He still has a good plan for you, and he's ready to see that plan come through you. And when we see the way that he sees things, and we hear the way that he hears things, so we open up our eyes to see and our ears to hear, and we just start to celebrate with cheer. We start to say, hey, God, you are good. Oh my gosh, you take moldy, rotten fruit and you use it for good. How cool is that? How good are you? And you see me like that too. God, you see me like this. Well, sometimes you don't see me like this moldy, rotten fruit, but sometimes I see me like this moldy, rotten fruit, and I think, oh no, it's a waste. I should be thrown out. And he says, no, 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 not today. Let's turn that around. And I believe that's what he's saying to us today, to invite us to see things his way and to turn it around and not feel like he let us down, and trust and know and believe he didn't let us down. Not just go off of our feelings, but go off of our knowing. If we want to know that he hasn't let us down, we can open up his word and see how he's never let anyone down. All those people who disobeyed him, all those people who didn't believe in him, and he never let them down. He still loved them. His promises were for them then, and they're for us now. And he wants us to know this. He wants us to shout this, and he wants us to live this and breathe this, and not think that we're like that moldy, rotten fruit. And the best thing to do would be to discard us. He says, no, I have good plans for you. And he talks about that in Jeremiah. He talks about that all throughout his Bible. And we can lean into his promises. We can lean into his word, and we can lean into his goodness and see how he's going to transform our story. Just like he took this moldy, rotten fruit and allowed me to see how it's used for his glory. So I wanted to share this with you and just tell you that I thank you. I love you and I appreciate you. So what is something that you need to do to give to him? What's something that feels like it's moldy and rotten within? And ask him. Ask him and invite that. Invite him into that space and ask him, God, can you show me the way? Can you show me the way? Because I feel like this has got to go. It's stinky, it's moldy, it's rotten, and it's time. Don't you know? It's past its time. Otherwise, it would be ripe and prime. And it's not, God. And give that to him and talk to him about it today. And just open up your ears in faith that he's going to show you the way. He's going to show you the way that he's going to cultivate it and turn it to good, using your story for his glory. All right? Because you're not moldy, rotten fruit. You're not. So lean into his truth and know that he's using this for good, for your good and for his. I love you guys, and that is it. That's it for today. A little bit shorter of an episode, and that's okay. I hope you have an incredible day, a wonderful day. If you are ready to, you can jump into our monthly membership in. I'll leave a link in the show notes in the description below the video. Or if you are ready to do the internal work, the subconscious work, to get your beliefs, your subconscious beliefs in alignment with his truth and with his word, I'd love to connect with you. You can also find the link to that in the description below this, I almost said video, below this episode. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.